Basic appraisal procedures, page 147. Application of an arm's length transaction. As you review the Fannie Mae definition of market value, note an important part. The property was sold in a competitive and open market. In fact, the definition considers several conditions that must be present for a transaction to be typical within the marketplace. Another way to characterize a typical transaction is to say the transfer of property was part of an arm's length transaction. This must be the case for the resulting sale price to be considered market value. An arm's length transaction means the transaction occurred under typical conditions in the marketplace, with each party acting in his or her own best interest. There are 7 specific requirements the appraiser must test for in determining whether a transaction represents a typical transaction. If the transfer is truly a typical transaction, another typical buyer could be expected to step in and buy the property for the same amount, or another typical seller would agree to sell the property under the same terms and conditions. The 7 typical conditions that must be present for a transfer to be considered an arm's length transaction are: 1. The buyer paid cash for the property at closing or obtained a conventional mortgage through a lender to pay the seller the agreed upon price at closing. 2. The seller did not grant any unusual payment concessions, such as owner financing or other payment terms. 3. The buyer and seller are not related in any way. 4. The buyer and seller are both acting in their own best interests. 5. The buyer and seller are not acting out of undue haste or duress. 6. The buyer and seller are both reasonably informed about all aspects of the property, its potential uses, market value, and market conditions. 7. The property has been available on the market for a reasonable period. All of these factors should be taken into consideration when determining a property's value by comparing different sales to arrive at a value opinion. Of course, an appraiser may not be able to ascertain all of these points, but the effort is important nonetheless because these points affect the sale price of a property and therefore its perceived value. If the seller was forced to sell because of a lost job, this could tend to lower the subject's selling price, or if the seller agreed to some type of owner financing. Extra note: question on test. No, both parties are acting in their best interest.